Yes, we are.
Happy Thursday.
Thursday. Yay.
Everybody having a good week?
Yes, I'm having an outstanding week because it's Thursday and I am off for a week for a spring break. So it's quite lovely for me.
Yeah, we are off tomorrow for Good Friday, one of the few holidays that we get too. So I'm excited that this is my Friday. Today was my Friday. So
yes.
Anybody that
work tomorrow, but I'm working from home, so that's good. I work in line with schools, so now that schools are on break, I'm on a little bit of a break.
Nice. Well, welcome back to Good Girlfriends. I'm Cara Dunstan, and we are going to talk about entrepreneurship and hopefully give some steps for people that are interested in starting their own business. We've learned through this journey that there are so many women who have started businesses, but there are some people out there who may have an idea or even an inkling that they want to start one and don't know where to start. So we are hoping that tonight will shed some light on how to get started. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-partner here, Jeanette.
Hello, everyone, and happy Thursday. I want to just say welcome to any new viewers, new Good Girlfriends. Welcome to our virtual living room, and welcome back to any old guests that, old girlfriends, I should say, that are sitting on the couch with us. It is my pleasure to have with us for another time. She's really, she's not a guest. Once you come to the virtual couch or the virtual living room one time, then the second time you're not a guest. But
she's been multiple times. She's a regular now. She's a regular.
So after the first time, though, that's it. You're not a guest anymore. So just one of our regular girlfriends, my college girlfriend, good girlfriend, Miss Tonya Leslie. She's going to join us tonight to share her story and her journey in entrepreneurship. I said to her earlier that I felt like I know some of her stories. I like to think I know all, but you never know all. You never know everything. But I'd like to think that her story is courageous and very inspirational. So I look forward to hearing and sharing with you her journey in entrepreneurship. I always say that we are just good girlfriends kicking it. We're not experts. I do believe, though, when you have someone that's doing the work and who has done the lift, that they are an expert. So I'm so happy and blessed to have her friendship. And I just can't wait for you all to hear from my good girlfriend, Miss Tonya Leslie, or Dr. Tonya Leslie. So,
Dr. Tonya Leslie. I like that. All right.
Thank you for having me again. It's good to be back with my good girlfriends.
So, Tonya, we want you to share. You have a plethora. Okay, so let's just say she has a plethora of stories, guys, that she could share with us about her journey into entrepreneurship. So you choose. Earlier in the week, she said, "What story?" I said, "Choose whatever you want to share with your girlfriends."
Yeah. So I don't know any of the stories, Tonya. So whatever story is going to be a new one for me. So.
Well, I was thinking, like, what story should I tell? And I think I'll tell the story that a lot of people, that I feel like is a lot of people's dream. And it's that I just kind of one day just opted out of the US and I moved to Belize and I lived there for 2 years and I built a house. And, I'm beginning to rent out the house. It took me a minute to do it. Like it just, after doing something like that, it felt like such a precious, it just felt so precious to me. And I was having family stay there, but I'm beginning to think about, turning it into more of a business. And that was a really big deal. And I think it speaks to my desire always to kind of work for myself. It's just really, it's hard working for people. And I think that, getting my PhD, moving to Belize, like all of these were steps to move to a space where I'm kind of working for myself.
So go ahead. Okay. So were you working for someone and then you quit the job and moved to Belize? So you had like a 9-to-5 kind of thing before, and you decided, you make a conscious life decision that I'm going to walk away from this 9 to 5 and move to Belize and build this house. Is that how that worked?
Sort of. So
That's
I
great.
think for, I was in the kind of US hustle, right? I was finishing up my PhD. I was working full time. And I got laid off from my job, which came as a big kind of shock and surprise. And, with that, I realized that like, I wasn't actually interested in looking for another job. And I don't know if it was because of, the PhD process was really intense. And so there was just a lot of stress around that. My job was also really stressful. And, I always say to people, like, it wasn't a happy story. I found like the relationship I was in wasn't going any place. I knew I couldn't afford the apartment I was living in without the job. And I didn't want to go back to a job just to keep that apartment. So, my family's from Belize. And so me going there, like knowing that my family's from Belize and they had a piece of property that's been in the family that no one was doing anything with, right? So there was an opportunity, but that had always been there. And it was always available for me to do something with. But I think the realization, like all my roads just stopped, like all my paths kind of got blocked. And I realized that I could keep doing what I always did, or I could try something new altogether. And so I was like, I'm leaving, y'all. I packed up my house. I gave everything away, which I'm a little bit regretting right now. I'm back 2 years later. I gave everything away. I was like, I'm out. And I just moved down. And luckily I have family that was able to help me. But I spent a year building a house that I didn't know how to build a house. Jeanette came to visit me in the process of that. And it was a beautiful, beautiful experience.
Wow.
So, let me interject here though, because I do know the story, right? So it's not like Tonya's family is from Belize, like her mother and father and, aunts and uncles were born in Belize, but Tonya, and she has Belize citizenship, but she wasn't reared in Belize, right? So to me, the act of picking up, selling everything. So how many people just abruptly, you get laid off? So let's really talk about it a little bit.
Right.
And here you are, new PhD, just got laid off. So you know you're talented, you're marketable. And how easy would it have been for you to just go back to doing what you've been doing, right?
Yep.
Very easy. And so I think that to make the hard decision to go to a third world country, like people that don't know Belize is beautiful. Belize Island is beautiful, but there are parts of it that are still underdeveloped. It's a third world country. And so she went, yes, there was family there, but she found an apartment in Belize City. Yes, I'm so glad I went to visit you. And it's a very different vibe from the US.
Yeah.
Like, some of the roads were unfinished.
So creature comforts weren't there.
No, the stuff that we take for granted.
Right.
And so, I come as a friend to, support her, see her. I want to lay eyes on her to see what's going on here. And I was so impressed with it's a total change of lifestyle. We're spoiled. I have to say, Americans are spoiled, right? So to go and see it, my girl is like doing her thing, finding her way. The banks gave her a hard time.
They did.
Because she was a Belizean citizen, but they knew clearly that she was not. I mean, it was just, you got to tell your story, because it wasn't an easy road. What woman builds a house in a third world country? She had to speak with builders. They were trying to yank her chain,
it was serious. And I bring this up as a story, kind of the entrepreneurial, because I feel like it speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit. I have other businesses. I have my own consulting firm, and then I have a business with a friend called We Need to Talk, where we, work and have conversations about race and gender with different, school districts and library systems. But I think a lot of that developed from this kind of process, right? Like putting myself to really the test to try to figure things out and make a way out of no way. and, to Jeanette's point, I do have family there, right? But I don't see them that often. So these aren't family like this, this is my sister now, right? My cousin Layla is my sister. We spent so much time together, but that had been, moving there was like the most time that we'd spent together in our lives, that I was actually there for 2 years. And it was hard. It's hard, when I hear people saying like, oh, I just want to, sell everything and move to an island. I'm like, yeah, yes. And right. Like, it's not easy because they always saw me as an American, even though I had a connection, they always were like clear, like you're an American. And because of that, I think there was some confusion about what I was trying to do, to be single and to be a woman of a certain age, to be single and have no children, like there's not a real circle there for me, And I think like doing all of these things, managing contractors, going to the bank every day to figure out mortgage situations, learning about septic tanks because the house is on an island. And so, right, like there's no sewage system. All of that was like a learning curve for me. And it was hard. There were times that I remember like just crying and feeling like this was such a bad idea. But then one day the house was built. And, every time I go into it now, I'm like, I built this, like everything in this house, I made the choice about. And, I played myself a couple of times making decisions at the last minute, like, oh, actually, I do want a door that does this, right? Because I didn't know. But, I think it speaks to kind of one, having faith that things will work out. Because I feel like at the heart of it, that was like my belief that, this was a home for my ancestors. And I really did feel like my ancestors kind of created this mission for me. So because of that, I knew that it would work out, that things would come together, but it wasn't always easy.
I hear in that whole story, which that's interesting. I remember Jeanette going to Belize, didn't know any of this other part of the story, but I remember you going there. But what I hear in that, in part of the entrepreneurial journey, is that helped you develop the grit that it takes to really stick it out to create a successful business. So that's what I heard out of there: faith and grit. You mentioned the faith already, but I also heard grit. That's real grit because I'm used to the spoils of life. So I'm like, I'd probably have given up and been like, you know what? This was nice, but I'm gonna come on back to the United States. But it takes real grit to stick that out and make the decisions that you made. So that's a really good story and great points for people that are really trying to do something that might not be, it's not going to be an easy road. So no matter what, whether it's here, in another country, whatever the entrepreneurial way is not an easy road. It's much easier to work for someone who's already created a business. So
I think like that would be kind of my biggest message for people, that whatever it is you want to do, you can do it, but it's not going to be easy. Right. And there's a lot of, you only know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. So as you're coming across that, there's so many moments where you might be like, you know what, this is too much. This isn't, it's too rough. It's too much. I don't know how I'm going to get this done. And to actually kind of make the commitment to yourself, if you're doing any kind of business venture, that you can figure it out. And that often, luckily, right, there's often people that you can hire to help figure it out so that it's not you alone. And, that was something I realized too, that there were certain things like I had to trust that my contractor knew what septic tanks do. Because I didn't know and I don't want to know, like I didn't want to spend my time trying to figure that out. I just had to trust that he would take care of that. And, like electrical things, like there was so much I didn't know until we were in the middle of it, choices that I didn't know to make until we were on the island. And then people were like, oh, you actually can't have metal on the front of your door because it's going to get rusted because of the sea air. Like I wouldn't have known that, right. or whatever. But while there were so many moments where I was like, I should just go home. But I also was like, I'm not going home, right? And so because I had made kind of this commitment, it forced my hand in certain ways. And, there were so many things I experienced. It was so great. I remember a day, here's like a quick funny story where my contractor was just dragging it along, right? And anyone who's done any work in the house, how contractors are. They had gotten probably another job. And so they were on that job. And so all I had left were little things that needed to be done for it to be finished. But every day that it wasn't finished meant I couldn't move into the house. And so I'm living in an apartment, but I'm already paying, on this house. And I was like, I need you to come and finish this stuff. So he was like, yeah, whatever. So, I went out and I bought a machete. Now, machetes are easy to get in Belize, right? Because you have to cut your grass and people cut their grass with that. And I took a picture of it and I was like, you better come tomorrow or something's going to happen. And then I waited 10 minutes and I was like, just kidding. Because I was like, the police. But like, I had to get creative with people, like I had to really like dig deep inside and get kind of some of the strength, because it's really hard. And it's very hard, especially like in countries where like men are very manly, right? And they're not used to some woman coming around and being like, this needs to happen and that needs to happen. So, and then my New York attitude.
You should be used to that though. That's the same as here. I mean, men aren't used to it.
But even more like aggressive, I would say. And, as a New Yorker, I was seen as aggressive, right? Wow. Like my ways of being is not a Belizean way of being. People are not as like quick and want things done fast and talking fast and demanding. So I also had to learn how to kind of step back a little bit and manage myself.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of lessons for you too, growth for you. I remember, when you were dealing with the banks. So Tonya had Belizean money in the bank, and yet they were giving her a hard time about getting a mortgage. And so initially, it was like you said, your New York attitude, or just like, I'm dealing with these people. And finally she said, I had to start going there and spending time just to say, hey girl, how you doing? Hey,
building relationships.
Yeah. Relationships to get it done. Like, that's the way they handle business in Belize. So that's the way you had to move. Yeah. But just, not saying, just using that as an example of, you had to figure out how to get to the end goal to win. And it took you building different relationships, tempering your personality so that you could get to the goal of developing your property, your rental property, your legacy to your family, all of that.
Yeah.
I love all these messages. Like within the story that you're telling, I took some notes already. Number one, that you said, and I think this is important for every entrepreneur to think about, is that you're not going to know everything. No business owner, even the successful ones, knew everything when they started, and they don't know everything today. So don't worry about, just jump in, whether you think if you don't think you know everything, it's okay, because nobody knows everything, but it's figure outable, so you can figure it out and somebody can help you. So that's a really good point that I feel like for entrepreneurs, that you just have to know that and be okay with that you're not going to know everything. And then you just said about building relationships, and I don't care what business it is or whatever, the core of everything in life is relationships. It doesn't matter. You can look at anything in any part of life, including business and building a business. At the core is relationships. So, I think those are two important messages that I'm hearing as you're telling the story, that points for entrepreneurs, that, and some people are natural relationship builders and some aren't. And so that's a skill for some, and for others it's a challenge. And so for those that it is a challenge, that's just something that you will have to work on if you want to be an entrepreneur, that you just need to, it's something that it can be a learned behavior. It just comes natural for some, but it can be a learned behavior how to build relationships as well. So some muscle you have to
and Tonya, hi everyone.
Hi, Regina Clay.
How are you? And Tonya, I just want to say, because I talk about this all the time, is about resilience, right? Mm-hmm. That's part of the grit. Mm-hmm. Getting knocked down, but not letting it stay down, bouncing back from whatever the situation is. And one of the things that I think is really just in listening to your story thus far, because a lot of times I hear female entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I quit my job and I became an entrepreneur. And they had a husband who had benefits, who had money coming in, who had, you know what I'm saying? It's a whole different situation when you are single and you leave a job and you build an entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like people, and I think that one of the things is just your transparency and your honesty about that. Because it is not easy necessarily as a single person, because you still have to pay bills. You still have to, you have to have health insurance. You have to have those things. It's not something, and I'm not saying that those persons that may be married, but I'm saying if you have that backup, that's a whole different situation.
Yeah.
Than if you don't, and you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. You don't know how you're going to pay for that health insurance. You don't know. And then to be in a foreign country with a group of people that don't think like you have been, like you have been accustomed to thinking. That's a whole different scenario that I think is important as well to understand. One of the things that I would want to ask you is, were there times, and I think you did talk about this a little bit, were there times where you were like, yeah, I'm done, I'm out, I can't do this anymore, I don't want to do this? And what made you say, I gotta go forward?
Oh, there were so many times. I'm just like, there's so many stories. But there was one moment, there was a moment where I was like, I've had enough, where we were coming to the end of it and there were still all those little things that needed to be done. And the electrician was doing something and found out that whatever wiring happened before wasn't the right wiring. And I put my head down and I cried. And that was the first time that I'd cried in front of my contractor and team, right? Usually I was very like, sorry for all the noise in the background. Usually I was very kind of jokey and tough and, would, be kind of like, hey, let's go have beers later. But this day I put my head down and I cried. And my electrician was like so horrified and everything got done really quickly. And what it taught me in that moment was sometimes like we have to change our direction, right? Like that I kept coming in like this, like a hammer, and it wasn't making anything happen. And the day that I put my hammer down and changed, like, I'm not saying that everyone should always cry, right? But like I had to change my approach. And it was received in a way that I wish I had known, like if I had been a little bit softer in the process, as opposed to I was so goal oriented, right? And of course, right, because of all the things you're saying, I had financial obligations, I had, all this stress on me, but I had never really, I don't think I'd ever really explained to people the level of stress. I just was coming off as really tough and like, when is this going to be done? I need to know deadlines. You need to get here today. Here's a picture of a machete. Like, what are we doing? As opposed to saying like, you know what? This is really hurtful to me. This is really difficult for me to understand. Like, I'm so hurt that we can't get this done. So like, that's what I think, that when at the moments where I wanted to give up, the pathway opened when I changed my perspective, right? When I changed my view of the whole situation. And I feel like that was the biggest lesson for me. And still, in starting other businesses, when you feel like this isn't working, that's when you gotta like take off your glasses, put on a new pair of glasses so you could see something differently. Because often what's not working is your approach, right? And sometimes it's not worth hammering, like trying to break down the door, because there's a pathway and you're just so busy focused on one way of doing that you don't see it.
Oh, that's great. That is powerful.
Yes, it is.
Powerful. And becoming vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Becoming vulnerable when you have a persona of maybe being tough or being focused or being this way, and like, hey, I'm like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But oh, that's good. That was good.
So, Tanya, you have a couple of other businesses that you briefly mentioned. And how did you use your experiences from building the home in Belize, your rental property in Belize, as a springboard to help you with navigating your other businesses that you started?
Well, so when I, I was there 2 years, we built the house, and it really just was kind of like a family house. And, I decided that I needed to come back to the US, and like I needed, my career is here, my connections are here. And so I was like, all right, it's time, like I need to kind of rebuild my resources, because I kind of tapped out everything getting this house built and going to Belize. So I came back, and I started working in a full-time job. But a friend of mine who we used to work together teaching at Pratt University, we would teach student teacher librarians. And she's a white woman. Her name is Jessica Hockman. She's fantastic. And we were working at Pratt together. And one of the things we realized was that, one, our student teachers were mostly white women. And two, like they were wanting to work in New York City and hadn't had a lot of teaching around what it means to work in a diverse community, how to be kind of a culturally responsive teacher. And so we brought that into our practice. And what we found was when our student teachers got jobs, they always came back to that kind of content, right? They always came back to the conversations we had about race and about gender and about ethnicity. And they found it was really helpful to their careers. So during COVID, when we had kind of this moment of, racial kind of awareness in the country, we were both getting asked to kind of do the things that we were doing with our students with other groups. And so we created a company called We Need to Talk, because what we realized is that was basically what people were calling us to say. Like, we need to talk to someone about race. We need to talk to someone about how race shows up in, library spaces or school spaces or publishing houses. And so, we decided that that's what was going to be the name of our company, because we felt like that was our strength, that we can talk about hard things. So we built this company together. And in a story, like in a learning from Belize, I was like, I don't really know how to build a partnership, right? Like I've always done kind of my own thing, but like now we're in a partnership, and we really wanted our friendship protected and our business protected. So we hired a lawyer with our first kind of earnings to pay for those services, because we didn't want to get it wrong. Like neither one of us wanted to take the chance of doing it incorrectly, right? Like of figuring out how to do a partnership and just kind of doing it on our own and being informal about it, even though we felt strangely about formalizing it, right? Like we didn't want either one of us to feel like, oh, it's not that I don't trust you or anything like that. But we kind of came to an agreement that our friendship was what we really wanted to maintain. And so we wanted to have the legal structures available to us so we would know how to manage our partnership. And I think a lot of like what I brought from Belize, the idea that we didn't know what we didn't know. So we got people to help us know. We made a little bit of money. And so we immediately reinvested that in the company as kind of our initial, both of us, like, we're going to put this money in, we're going to get the partnership set up, we're going to get kind of our legal documents drawn up, we're going to, apply for our LLC, and we're going to do all of the business aspect of that. And to this day, I think that was a wise decision of just being really mindful that even in friendships, like even in family, right? Like, let's be really clear about, let's be clear so we can maintain integrity in our real relationship, not just in our business relationship, but in our friendship. Let's have kind of legal things drawn up. Let's have our schedule of when we're doing taxes and all of those things. So that was something I think I also learned, right, in Belize, because a lot of that I was doing on my own. And it was a relief to start a business with someone, to have someone to share the burden of what we're creating, and someone who can like tap in when I need to tap out. And I've never really had that before in everything else I've done on my own. I did the house on my own. I did my own consulting on my own. So I don't know what your question was. Now I feel like I've kind of gone off.
No, I think you addressed it. I mean, that was, how did you use your experiences from Belize, or how did your experiences from Belize kind of transfer to you creating your business, like with your partnership, even your personal business, consulting business. And then you also are an author. So, I mean, negotiating contracts and all of that stuff, I wanted to show our good girlfriends how you were able to use all of those learnings from what you learned, I should say, from Belize to create other businesses and multiple streams of income, which is important.
Can I also say this, Tonya? You made a statement in what you just said that a lot of times, I think sometimes people that go into entrepreneurship, they don't want to, they feel like it's going back to a full-time job, right? It's going back, it's backwards. Oh, if because I hear a lot of entrepreneurs, if you have to take a full-time job, you're not really a true entrepreneurship. You're not in true entrepreneurship, which I absolutely disagree with wholeheartedly, right? Because I believe, because I'm an entrepreneur as well, a full-time job funds my entrepreneurship.
Right.
And sometimes you have to have that full-time job to fund your to fund your dreams.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not going backwards. And so I feel, and sometimes even if people have gone full-time entrepreneurship and then if they take a full-time job, they really do feel like I'm going backwards. And that's not necessarily true.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I thank you for saying that. You're like, I took a full-time job and then out of that birth this and out of that, because that's what happens a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you're single, right? Like I needed some scaffolds. I couldn't take the financial risk and the health risk,
absolutely,
right? Of starting businesses on my own and letting that grow. And while it wasn't about not thinking that they would be successful, but like, I'm a woman of a certain age. I got to go to the doctor. Like I got to get these glasses every year are changing. So, like my visions, you get a certain age and suddenly you can't see. So I knew that like I needed, I was taking a chance on myself, but I needed kind of, some protections for myself. And so I do think that if you don't have to take a job, right? If you have, maybe a partner, and so then that you've got health insurance covered or a certain level of income coming in, then maybe you can take a bigger leap. But I think, even a small step, right, towards your dreams every year, is important. And I would say too, that the partnership taught me also how to be better with my own independent business, because like, I'm just kind of willy-nilly. I don't really, I'm not a numbers person. I'm not really keeping track. And then because we were keeping so much track with our partnership, it made me realize that like, I needed to have done a better job with that in Belize. I could have been a little bit closer to my budget, but I wasn't, which allowed for a lot of error, right, around that, and including my own personal consulting, because I'm not so, and there were certain things that I was being cheap on, like I was getting free software for myself, trying to stay cheap. And then I was paying for it in my partnership, and I saw the value of paying for it for myself, so I think that's part of it too, right? Like you have to take the small steps, and you have to take care of yourself, whatever that means.
I heard some stuff in that also in that last part that you were talking about when you talked about your partnership with a friend. I love that you talked about making, having it in legally bound terms, because I think it can be tricky. And we actually had a segment a couple of weeks ago with two friends who are in business together, and they talked about how they make theirs work. But I feel like people sometimes are leery about going into business with friends. And I do think you have to pick the right friend. Yes, that's for sure. But I love the fact that to protect your friendship, you have some legal things in place so that it's all clear. We're all clear on that. And we can still maintain the integrity of our friendship. But the business will, business is business and friendship is friendship. And a lot of times those two can get muddy for some people, but if you keep it strictly that way, I think that that's a key to success. So I love that you talked about that.
Yeah, I think it's really, important to, like, we even talked about what would we do if we want to dissolve the company, if we want to move away, what's that going to look like and how will we manage that? And so that's part of, our contract as well.
Yeah.
So that we can do the work, because neither one of us want to worry about the business. We just want to do the work, right? Like that's our passion. But we also knew, like, for us to have the freedom to do that, we need to create some like guardrails, for the company, and then for us individually and as a team. And it made me realize that whatever the entrepreneurial work that you're doing, you need some guardrails, right? And so whether the guardrail is, I need a full-time job because I need health insurance, or the guardrail is, I'm going to pay for a really good accountant because I'm not keeping track of my numbers, like whatever that is, because it could be, you end up doing this work and then you're working a full-time job, and, then I got to worry about invoices and who paid and who didn't pay. And did I pay my contractors, their money? And how am I going to hire in people to do this work? And where's the proposals, right? So, how do you take care of yourself is such a big thing. And in friendships, in partnerships, how do we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our business?
Ooh, Tonya, can you talk about, and you just talked about it a little bit, about outsourcing, because that's a big thing in entrepreneurship. A lot of times with entrepreneurs, we want to keep things close to the chest and we don't want to outsource. And then we're like just overwhelmed. Let me speak for myself. Maybe other people aren't, but I was overwhelmed. But there are certain things that I know that I am not skilled, efficiently skilled in, that I had to outsource to other people. Now, let me just say this, and Jeanette and Cara and Marcia know, I outsource things in my home life too. Because I look.
That's part of your self-care.
Because it's about my well-being, right? It's about my self-care. But just talking about outsourcing in entrepreneurship, I think is important too.
Well, they say like it takes money to make money a little bit. And I think that's also a hard thing to recognize as an entrepreneur, that you can take some shortcuts, but then you're building your own website on your own, or you're, invoicing on your own, right? Like, and even projects that we took on, there were projects that we were like, we could do this, but what are we also not doing if we take on this big project? And so we started hiring some consultants, which was a big deal for us to actually hire people and pay them through our business, because we had always kind of conceived it as us, right? Like she and I, we do workshops, but we had a project in which we could bring some consultants on. And it was really great because we knew that we had good people that we could hire, but it also helped us to see that we can stretch beyond, our limited view of like what you and I can do is only based on how many hours we have in a day.
Right.
And besides this business, I had a full-time job. I got a house, I got a house in Belize. I got an apartment, in New Jersey. I got whatever other things, right, that I'm managing and doing, plus the work. So we outsourced a lot of, like our website, we outsourced it getting built. We're, outsourcing our financial supports. And then we hired some consultants to help us take on projects that we could have said yes to and not hired anyone. But we decided, like, why are we, why are we killing ourselves, right? That part of the beauty of the business would be if it could grow and we would have people who are working for us, right? That to a certain extent, like the goal is that we are not working hard every single day. So yeah, you gotta spend a little bit of money to make some money.
I think that's a great point, because a lot of times, and even like hearing you talk about how you, like, I'm like, wow, she's growing her business, right? If you have enough business to hire, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good point that you raised for aspiring entrepreneurs, to know that they don't have to do it all, right? That might be why some businesses, fail, because people take on more than they can handle without asking for help or outsourcing, as Regina said. So I think that that's an awesome point.
And can I just say too, for entrepreneurs, I would say to like pay people for their labor. I think that, you know, it is important, like when people can help you, that's great. But like, if you're building a business, your hope is that you're going to make a profit, right? And so, you know, don't kind of lean on people like, oh, can you do me this favor? Just build me this website, or, oh, like, pay people for their labor, because you hopefully will get paid from that. And I also believe like that's an energetic kind of money idea, right? That if you're holding so tight to your money, then nothing can come in your hands. But if you can kind of give freely of your money and say to your friend, oh, you're a photographer, so great, you know, tell me what your rate is, and I'll, you know, I'll pay the rate through the business, because, you know, I think you're so great. Because I think for us as entrepreneurs, right, you do feel a little bit like this with the money, because you're like, I don't have that much money. I'm trying to start this business. There's all these things to pay for. You got to pay for your LLC. You got to pay for all of this stuff. But I really feel strongly like, pay for people's labor, pay for the help that you need. And I'm not saying like spend tons of dollars, right? Like, of course, look for the best deal you can get, but really, you know, pay people for their work to help you build your work.
Right.
And you know what, Tonya, when I think about that, I'm like, especially if you're in the entrepreneur world, like you're expecting people to pay you. So
Right.
why would you not expect to pay people?
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like that always amazes me. You know, you know, Tonya, I'm sure this probably comes to you as well, where people are like, I just want to talk to you and get your advice.
Mm-hmm.
My time is money.
Right.
You know what I mean? And and not to say, and I, trust me, I don't do that. I don't necessarily charge everybody every time. But when people just want to pull from me, my time is money.
Yeah.
And so I can't necessarily just give it to you like that. You know what I mean? And so therefore, when I go to someone, because I'm not good with, look, you said website building or something like that, or content creation and email creation and all of that kind of stuff. So I pay somebody to do those things for me. And you know, I don't even think about it. So it definitely is reciprocal, and it will come back to you tenfold.
Yeah.
Sure.
I like to look at it like this. People are not, you know, those services are not their hobbies. Those are their business. There's a difference between a hobby and a business. Like if it's a hobby, that's one thing, but those same people are running businesses. They're not, this is not just something they do. So I agree.
So to those points, how do you, how would you say you manage that, right? Because with lots of entrepreneurs, you know, hairdressers, I'm just going to think of like those kind of services, hairdressers, barbers, chefs, you know, family members, good friends. Oh, you know, they want you to do a free service. You're my friend. I want you to come to my school and consult for free, right? How do you manage that in a way that kind of
maintains the relationship,
maintains your relationships, family relationships, friendships? People are going to want your service, right? And think that they're entitled to it. So I'm sure this is something that has come up for both of you, and just curious, you know, what advice would you give to, you know, entrepreneurs just starting out that, you know, all the family wants to sit in their, you know, cousin's chair to get their hair done. I'm being honest, because, you know, it's a true thing. And so then they're not making money because they're doing, you know, 10 heads of hair for free.
You get comfortable with saying, okay, my fee is, like, before they even get in there, just be comfortable saying my fee is this, so people are clear that this is what you're expected.
And maybe like, you know,
stop to it a lot of times once you start talking about your fee.
You know, we created like kind of we created our rate schedule based also on like who we're working for, so that, you know, let's say if we're working for a nonprofit, I'm not charging you the same thing that I would charge a corporation, right? Because I know that you're a nonprofit. And so I think like there's one, you have to kind of set up. So like if you have a service that you're providing, maybe you do have a friends and family rate, but you still got a rate, you know, like
Exactly.
And maybe there's some quid pro quo, like, all right, I got you on the hair, girl, but you know, you're doing my makeup, right? Like there's got to be some relational aspect of it, because you can't just give it all away.
Right.
It's not a hobby. That's
It's
only,
not.
you can only do that when it's a hobby. When it's a business, like you said, there's some kind of transactional something going on, not one way.
Right.
So yeah.
And
Great,
I too, for people to respect like your work, you know, like respect what you do and see like somebody's got to pay for these lights to be on, right? And so
right.
I'm not trying to, you know, again, like using the nonprofit idea, I want to support nonprofits. I want to be able, you know, I want kind of smaller folks to do this work and have conversations about race and like build their own work. And I don't think that they should be broke doing that. But I definitely, you know, so whether it's like we've done things for free and knowing that like we get shouted out in the newsletter or, you know, like some kind of arrangement around that. And not that everything, you know, because it's not always about the money, right? Sometimes like just getting a well-placed ad somewhere or being featured in, you know, a space where, you know, there are other people who would be there and available for your service. Like those are things that are worth making, you know, concessions for, but like you can't help everybody.
Yeah. And sometimes you may donate your services, but that's on you. It's not on them to decide when you donate your services. So that's good.
Oh, I came in a little late. So Tonya, are you still in Belize?
No, I'm back in the US, but I do go home a lot. I'm going back next week. And so to me, Belize now is my home, you know, that I have a house there. Like I have a home and I go and I got my own bed and like I got my own stuff. And it's nice to like pack a bag and I don't need to take too much clothes because I got stuff at home. So I'll be going soon, but I'm back home. And, you know, for a lot of reasons, I feel like my house in Belize is where I will retire. But I wasn't ready just yet to live that slow, because my house is on an island where there's like 1,000 people that live there year round. So it's a small place, and
there's only 1,000 people there.
It's so interesting, Tonya. Yeah, because when I went to the Virgin Islands, to visit, and while it's beautiful and it's sunny and there's beach and it's blue, I was like, oh, it's too slow for me. I was like, it's too slow. You know what I mean? I was like, what? I mean, because they move like, you know, just as they move. Like nothing is, you know. Belize is actually one of those places that I want to go, though. It's one of those places.
To visit. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. And it, you know, I do think, I was saying to some friends of mine, like if you're going to have conversations where you're talking about race all the time, it's very taxing. It's very hard. I feel a little bit burnt out. And so I'm really looking forward to going home and being slow and just like being on a beach and be able to think and reading a book and like, so, you know, I think that for me, that's what I realized, that the balance of that in order to kind of survive the intensity of the work that I do, I need a space that is very slow, but I can't live there all the time, at least not yet. Right? Not at this point in my life. I'm not ready for it to be that slow all the time.
How do you find your clients? Like how's that work? Like how do you source business? Or
we actually have gotten a lot of business through word of mouth, you know, that people who have seen us in one presentation and then decide to take that back to whether it's a school district or their company. So we've gotten a lot through word of mouth, and we're trying to, you know, as part of our kind of 2022 plan, to think a little bit more about marketing and what would happen if we really kind of put an effort out to get clients, you know, but I think we needed some time to kind of build up our own muscle and, you know, figure out consultants and figure out our kind of financial supports and get our website up. So we needed to do a lot of foundational things before we could really start marketing, because there's a point where we couldn't handle more business than we have right now, you know, like we haven't scaled yet.
I actually, real quick, I am just looking at our Facebook Live. So we have some comments. It goes back to, I think, Jeanette, you asked, how do you, people that ask for favors, how do you address that or whatever? And so we have some comments here. One says, that a nice response to that is, this is all I can do. I think that's what she's saying. another response is, oh, sure, I can do it for this amount. That's a good one. And then also there's another comment that says, as a coach, it's always let's talk. And the answer is no. And, and then there's a comment here that says return on investment. I'm not sure. Maybe we were talking about that. Return on investment. And then our Cece, our good girlfriend, says, yes, she does baked goods. And she says, yes, every family event, people expect me to bring baked goods, or family often complain about your price, but are quick to go pay someone else full price and even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as a practice, like as women, that it really is an important thing for us to like support other women and pay them for it. Because if you were going to go to the store and buy it, then you could pay your home girl to make it, and know that it's going to be healthy or, right? Like it's going to be clean and fresh and all of those wonderful things. And I do think that there's a certain feeling of like when it's people, not that you don't value it, but like, I'm always looking for a hookup too, but I also try to be really mindful of, how do I make sure that like that I take care of the people that I love and who take care of me.
Okay, so we had some clarity on the return to investment piece. She said identifying what you can get out, do at lower cost or free is return on investment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, good points on all that. Really good. And I agree. I mean, I at least try to support, even if it's a little more pricey, if it's somebody, especially if I have a personal relationship, I'm willing to support, because I think that's what we have to do. I mean, I'm like, we need to support each other. So yeah, it might be a little higher than something else, but if it's not outrageously higher, then I'm going to go ahead and support it anyway, because we need to.
One thing I've found, especially over these last couple of years, and how we are trying to support Black-owned businesses even more, we were willing to pay people of other races. Like we don't negotiate with them.
Right.
They give you the price.
And their price is their price.
And their price is their price. And we're like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to our own, it's like, what, girl, you charging that much? What? Mm-hmm. Oh, I don't know. But, you wouldn't do that with somebody else. And so I think that we have to, we just have to respect that. Now at the same token, I'm very big on customer service.
Yes.
Right. So I'm very big on responsiveness. Yeah. I'm very big on customer service. I'm very big on, if someone is not happy, I'm going to, I'm going to work with them. Mm-hmm. But I think that we just really have to be, I was just at an event this weekend and I was, selling my books. And it was a kind of a close-knit group. And one of the guys said, he was like, well, I don't have the money. He said, I don't have the cash. And he didn't have any of the Venmo or any of the things that I had. So I said, I'm going to sign your book and, I'll get it from you later. And I trusted that because of the environment that I was in. Now, if I was in a different environment, I might not have done that. But, I trusted that environment. I knew that person, right? And so, that was part of it as well. Someone else contacted me since then and said they had wanted to get my book. They didn't get it. And so since then, I've gotten their information. I'm going to send them the book and I know that they'll send me the money. You know what I mean? Like, so you have to understand the environments that you're in. Yeah. But I will say that I was grateful because nobody expected me to just give them a book.
Mm-hmm. I saw a quote recently and it really struck me. It says, people that want to see you win will help you win. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important. I'm like, you know what? If somebody, I don't care what the book's about. I'm honestly might not even read it. But if my friend wrote a book, I'm buying it.
Yeah.
I'm supporting it. I don't care what it's about. I mean, I remember one of my mom's friends, and she was really nice to me when I was growing up. I'm not gonna say who it is, but she wrote this book about, she's a PhD in education or something. She wrote some book. I don't even know what it's about. But I went to the book signing and I bought the book. It was like this thick. I knew I wasn't reading that book. But I was like, I'm supporting this book. And I think that, you know, we just have to do that. We have to support each other. And the book was expensive. I was like, I know I'm not reading this, but whatever. But, you know, if you have a relationship with somebody, first of all, don't expect it for free, and buy at least one book, if not more. I mean, I try to buy at least one book. So, you know, buy it for somebody else, buy it as a gift for someone, do something, or make a donation. Even if you can't afford the book, at least support the person in some form or fashion so that they, you know, can continue to do whatever they're trying to do, because you will go buy somebody else's book and pay whatever money for it. So why not just support your friend you know, don't expect it for free.
I have one final question for you, Tonya. So I heard you say that you and your partner are looking to scale up your business. And there are a lot of moving parts to scaling up a business. There were a lot of moving parts to even starting your business. So, and you know, as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, you don't know all the intricate details or all the ins and outs of doing that, right? So my question for you is, who did you consult? Like, how important is it to have somebody that has done the work, right? That you consult? How did you know to move the way you moved in the beginning of your establishing your business? I mean, be honest, you might have fumbled a little.
I would say I've always had mentors that I could talk to about stuff. You know, women who maybe weren't doing what I wanted to do, but were doing, or what I was planning to do, but were doing things that were related. And so I got a lot of good advice. I got a lot of good pep talks. I got a lot of good, just even listening ears, right? Because I'm also a big believer in talking yourself into knowing that sometimes you just need to talk it through, and then you get where you need to go. But to have someone maybe there who's like, all right, well, what about this? How are you going to handle that? Did you think about this? Right? That's just kind of helping you. You're driving, but they're kind of helping you with the directions. So I've had people do that. And we're now, you know, because we're a women-owned business, we're now trying to look at some of those formal channels to see if we can get some support, some mentorship through the organizations that exist. Because I think now we're ready for that. You know, at first, like our first couple of years of just like, what are we doing? What are we selling? How much are, you know, like pricing and proposals and all of that took up so much knowledge that now I think we're ready to have like some like coaching, you know, from like real business professionals. But I also would say that all along, now that I'm thinking about it, I've had a lot of different coaches. I've had a lot of different coaches that look like different things. So one coach that I would shout out is Mama Regina Tomasauer. I always forget how to say her last name. And she's this woman who talks about like tapping into your womanly strength, into your, she runs a school of womanly arts. And I went to her sessions, and it really kind of helped me like feel a little bit more confident, right? So it wasn't a business coach per se, but it was kind of a personal coaching to help me access my own knowing. So I think, you know, it's also important, like, you know, I had a friend recently who was like, oh, you know, I'm looking for a coach who can help me with my resume. And I was like, look for a life coach, because the resume will come through that, but like, you need to know how great you are so that you can sell it, right? She can only help you with what you give her. So like, you got to work with what do you have to give? So all of that to say, I think I've had mentors, but I've also sought out support and coaching that wasn't necessarily business coaching, but that was kind of life coaching for me, so that I could feel confident and I could feel like I do have something I can share. I do have like a product that's worthy. This is a good idea, you know, and that had to come from me.
You just mentioned life coaching, and for anybody that's watching this, people that's actually commenting on our live is Jolinda Agnew, and I believe she's a life coach. So I just wanted to shout her out real quick. So Jolinda, if I'm wrong, put it in the chat, but I think you're a life coach. And if you are, put your contact information in our chat so people can reach out to you. But I had another quick question from that. What are womanly arts?
So it's a School of Womanly Arts. What's her last name, Jeanette? Do you know how to say it?
I don't know the last name, and she's an author too. Let me just.
She's an author.
Keep talking. I'll look her book. I won't say the name of the book.
Womanly arts, like what is that? I'm curious.
Her whole thing is that, like, as women, we live in a very kind of masculine world, right? And so the masculine space wants us to be very structured and very like put everything in a box, but the feminine essence is a little more fluid. And so how can we tap into our feminine essence so that we can live in a kind of masculine world, but know that like the creativity, your resources are refreshed, not by kind of the structure of the masculine, but by kind of the flexibility of the feminine, right? So she teaches and talks about how to, like, as a woman, to kind of tap into your own power, how to like brag about your work. One of my favorite things that she does is she teaches women how to brag. And so she'll have a session and she'll just say, brag, you know, and then everyone says like, well bragged. And it's a realization that you never really stand up and say, you know what, I wrote 6 books. And you know what, I have a PhD. And you know what, like, you know, like we don't talk about ourselves like that. As women, you know, we're not used to kind of, one, saying those things, and then 2, as women, witnessing, right, holding space for other women and being like, good for you. Yes, all of that. So she teaches things like that. And I learned a lot from her.
That's interesting. And I just had a conversation with a good girlfriend of mine who happens to also be my boss. I probably shouldn't say that, but anyway, so we were talking similarly about this, and I was telling her that she needed to do more of that. And I was explaining to her that how I interview for jobs, which has been majority of them I've actually gotten, is that I tell a story about myself. And I share so much in the story that by the time I finish my interview, most interviewers are like, wow, I know you've answered almost every question I was going to ask you. And I have to give a shout out to my high school, because I think the confidence of being able to do that and all those womanly arts things came from being at Polytechnic Institute with men. You know, it was, you know, you're competing with men, you got to be able to compete. And I think that you also learned how to use your womanly arts while you were competing with men. So I'm just going to give a shout out to my high school for that, because I might start my own business and teach women how to use their womanly arts.
Yes. I mean, I think we need it, you know, that you realize, like, I'm just grinding, like going back to my story about like, I'm banging down the door, and it's not until you see my tears and you see kind of my vulnerability that you're like, oh, snap, like we need to like finish this lady's house, right? But prior to that, I was so busy being hard and being tough that I wasn't being vulnerable and starting from kind of the feminine space of like, you know what? This has got to get done. Like, I just can't take it anymore. Instead, I was like, you know, hurry up, and like cursing people out. And that didn't work. So I do think like we as women, you know, we're living in a kind of patriarchal world, and how do we tap into, you know, some of the truth of what we bring, right? Like the difference kind of energy that we bring, but still kind of, you know how to kind of play with the boys, right?
Yeah. I love it. This is awesome.
This is fun.
Thank you, Tonya, for sharing your story. See, she was like, girl, what story should I tell? I don't know. I saw Cara's advertisement. I don't know. I said, just get on here and tell your story.
You were like, we'll talk to a successful entrepreneur. I was like,
You're successful.
You are successful. The mere fact that you are an entrepreneur supporting yourself, that is success.
And lovely. She's not just getting by. It's like the fabulous.
Yeah. And you started multiple successful businesses. Yeah. That's, you know, that's not an easy feat. And
Tonya, you are success.
Yes, you are. Clearly.
You are success.
Thank you. I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful for all of my friends. And, you know, just it takes a village, right? Even when you're doing it on your own. So I'm just grateful for all the support.
That's awesome. Yeah, this was really good. I mean, there were so many good nuggets in there and good points, and yeah, serious. That was really good. So, well, thank you.
Thank you all.
You have to come back. We have so many topics for Tonya. I mean, she's a regular anyway, but we'll have to bring you back to talk about something else soon, because it's always a joy when you visit with us on the
And I love being with my good girlfriends. So thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you.
Oh,
Well,
so
thank
glad
you.
to meet you.
Hopefully everyone will have a wonderful Easter, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. So
Yes, yes.
we're looking forward to it. But this was great. Thank you, Tonya. And hopefully we'll hear about some people. Let us know, reach out and let us know if you were inspired to jump in and start your business, and let us know if we can be of help. We know lots of good girlfriends that can help with questions, and that's what we're all here for. So if you need advice, or you have questions, or you just want to talk to somebody, we can always connect you with people that we know that have tried it or doing it or whatever, so that we can all share. That's the whole point of Good Girlfriends. So let us know. And if you have any success stories, let us know that too. We want you to come on. So, and if we have any other entrepreneurs out there, we want to hear from you too. We are always looking to share information. So come on and share your story with us, so you can be an inspiration to somebody else. So have a wonderful evening. I hope everybody has a good Easter, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Good night, everyone. Thank you, Tonya.
Thank you.